and welcome everyone. Welcome to Good Living Practices with Dr. Ram Rao. NBHC is delighted to partner with Dr. Rao in bringing you the GLP sessions. Starting today, Northway Hindu Center will facilitate monthly sessions on the first Sunday of every month at 11 a.m., where Dr. Rao will share tips that we can adopt in our lives. Using this virtual platform, Dr. Ram plans to discuss several aspects from his book, Good Living Practices, and touch, heal, and inspire everyone. The Good Living Practices sessions will provide an opportunity to answer your queries and clear any confusion or doubts you may face while trying to adopt these practices in your own lives. We will start today's session with a small prayer. Om Sri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Sri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu. Sarve Santu Niramaya. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Ma Kashit Dukkha Bhag Bhave. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. We pray to the Lord Ganesha, Goddess Saraswati, and to the Guru to bless us as we start these sessions. We pray that all will be happy, all will be free from illness, all see what is auspicious, may no one suffer, and may happiness prevail in the entire world. So let us take the opportunity to listen to what Dr. Rao has for us today. It is now my honor and privilege to introduce my friend, Dr. Ram Rao. Dr. Ram Mohan Rao holds a PhD in neuroscience and was a research associate professor of neuroscience at the Buck Institute for Research on Aging in Novato, California. His research focused on age-associated neurodegenerative diseases with special emphasis on Alzheimer's disease. Ram has over 20 years of research and teaching experience in neuroscience, and he has published more than 50 peer-reviewed papers in scientific journals, including chapters in several textbooks. Ram is an NAMA board-certified Ayurveda practitioner, a registered yoga teacher from Yoga Alliance, and a member of the National Ayurvedic Medical Accreditation Council, NAMAC. He teaches Ayurveda and yoga at the California College of Ayurveda. Ram has published several articles in major yoga Ayurveda magazines and has been a featured speaker in several national and international meetings and symposia on yoga and Ayurveda. He is also the author of the best-selling book, Good Living Practices, the best from Ayurveda, yoga, and modern science for achieving optimal health, happiness, and longevity. What do we plan to do today? Dr. Rao will start the session introducing us to good living practices. During the course of our discussions, Ram will provide 3 GLP tips. Every session will have 3 GLP tips. Over the course of the next month, we can take the time to practice these tips. Once he finishes, I will ask him a few questions that Dr. Rao will respond to. At the end of the session, there will be an open Q&A time where you will have the opportunity to ask your questions on general health and wellness. You can also type your questions in the chat section and Ram will respond to them. We request you to not ask questions pertaining to any of your clinical conditions. So please mute all your phones, and the stage is now set for Dr. Ram Rao to make his presentation. Thank you, Ram. On to you.
Thank you, Radhika, for the wonderful, great introduction. And thank you everybody for coming in today on a Sunday morning. I know there may be other priorities in life, but I really appreciate you all coming here and listening to my presentation. I guess it must be some sort of a, an inherent urge to make sure that we are all well, and that's probably the reason why you're all joined me here. And it's my pleasure to talk to you about the good living practices for optimal health and wellness. Before I go there, I like to thank Radhika, I like to thank Siddharth, I like to thank Rukman Gada and the NBHC for providing this platform. All right, thank you very much for doing so. Now, inherent in that introduction that Radhika gave, there is a question, and the question is, why am I doing this? Okay, I've written a book, so why am I doing this? The reason is that I always think of optimal health as our own personal property. All right, your health and your wellness is your property, and you need to take good care of your health. Okay, the doctors are there, the practitioners are there, people are there to heal you. But the thing is, permanent healing, optimal health and wellness comes only if you take the desired steps and if you take the desired actions. So in addition to that, notice one thing. There are hundreds and hundreds of books on, let's say, diet. Okay, hundreds of books on various kind of exercises, hundreds of books on emotions and how to cultivate positive emotions or how to overcome negative emotions. Now, if everyone, and I'm sure most of you would have read some of these books, if not all. And of course, the society would have also got involved in reading all these books. But yet, the million-dollar question is, why as a society, despite having all these books, why as a society are we not healthy? Why are we suffering? The reason being that almost all these books or all the health and wellness programs that are out there, I consider them to be fractionated or incomplete. What do I mean by that? Well, the thing is, all the books on diet will focus on just diet alone, as though diet would completely eradicate everything, that all the problems that you have. All right. The books on exercises will tell you, yes, you have to finish doing 3 hours of exercise or 4 hours of exercise. All right. But these books don't talk about diet. They don't talk about emotions. The books on diet will not talk about exercises, or they will not talk about having a positive emotions. The books on emotions will tell you how to eradicate negative emotions and how to cultivate positivity, but they won't address about diet. They won't address about exercises. All right. And this, my friends, is what I call a fractionated approach. All right. And this fractionated approach, if you cultivate that, that's what leads you to health and suffering. So the question is, then what do we do then? How do we make sure that we have optimal health and wellness? Now, I did write the book, Good Living Practices. It was a bestseller for almost 2 months. There was a lot of responses. It was reviewed by several different journals from all over the world, and I fielded a lot of talks over the virtual platform. And the common question people ask me is, there are hundreds of tips that you have mentioned in your book, but how do we start, or where do we start? All right. So this was a unanimous opinion. Where do we start, or how do we start? So that's when I realized that it is, even though we have a book in place, it's always nice to have something handy. All right. The book has got thousands of tips. The question is, we cannot inculcate all those tips in one day or in one sitting. So the question is, what do we do then? How do we make sure that we can incorporate the tips, but at the same time, we make sure that we are doing it in such a manner that it is helping us? So this is what I did. Even though I put up some of these on YouTube, I thought, it would be nice to talk to you in person and then tell you about some of the tips. And it's not going to be like exhaustive tips. Each month that we have this program, I'll talk to you a tip or two, and then we practice that for the month, and then we come back next month, and then we talk about our experiences, and then we address any of the problems that we have in those tips, and then overcome that problems, and then we move on to a few more tips. All right, so that's the reason what I thought it would be a good idea to make it more interactive and to talk to you. And NBHC was very kind enough to come forward and say, we'll host it, and we'll help you in moving this message forward. So with that question, let me go ahead with the tips that we talk about for today's thing. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen here. I don't know if you can see my screen.
All yes, right. Yes. Right.
So when we talk about fractionated life, all right, this is very, very important, and I cannot emphasize more than this. So I've given it in the form of a diagram, so it becomes very easy for you to understand what I mean by a fractionated or an unfractionated life. When we talk ourselves as humans, all right, this is a thing that we need to understand. We are the body, mind, and emotions. We cannot separate the three. All right. So the minute you talk about yourself as being a human, you have to consider the body, you have to consider the mind, and you have to consider the emotions. What this means is that for any time, at any given place, for any moment, whatever activity you perform, you have to make sure that your body, your mind, and your emotions are on that task or on that activity. What this also means is that if you do that way, all right, then it's what I call is an unfractionated life. An unfractionated life is a life where you don't have any suffering. On the other hand, if you do any task or any activity where the body is doing something else, the mind is at a different place, and you're having a lot of emotions, that's a fractionated life. And that fractionated life makes you more susceptible to ill health and suffering. So what this means is that at any given moment, the body, the mind, and the emotions have to be in sync. They have to function as one unit. And only when they function as one unit, that's when you'll experience optimal health. All right. And this is not something where you can do for now and then forget about it for the rest of the day. It has to be 24/7. All right. So the question is, what do we do? What kind of tools do we have? Well, good living practices are tools that will keep the body, mind, and emotions in sync. All right. And for optimal health and living, you have to practice this 24/7. So then you may ask, what are those tasks or what are those activities? Well, it's just not one task or one activity. We have everything that you do at any given moment. Whatever you do, you have to keep the body, mind, and emotions in place or in sync. All right. So today what I'll do is I'll talk about some aspects of eating where you can bring the body, mind, and emotions in sync. All right. So today's session will talk about good eating practices that require for the mind, for the emotions, and for the body to be in sync, to be functioning as one unit. All right. So when we talk about eating, let's first look into the aspect of cooking, because that's where we start off our eating practices. All right. The art of cooking, or the art and science of cooking. The question is, when you are cooking the food, where is your physical body is in place. All right, you are in front of the stove and you brought all the paraphernalia, you've brought all the materials. The question is, where is your mind and where are your emotions at that moment when you're cooking? Okay, because remember one thing, cooking is a meditative act. Cooking is equal to meditation. You don't have to practice other aspects of meditation if you bring in meditation in the form of cooking itself. Okay, so the question you need to address is, okay, now that I'm ready to start cooking, what is the state of my emotional my emotions? What is my emotional state? Okay, so if you have any kind of emotional upheavals, if you have any kind of emotional imbalances, you don't want to start your cooking route around that time. You have to bring down your emotions. You have to be calm. All right, and one way to achieve that, okay, one way to achieve the calmness is keep everything ready and just close your eyes for a moment. Or just look at outside nature. If you have a yard, just look at the nature. Just look at the yard. Just look at the flowers. Just look at, or if you have some flowers or plants inside your kitchen where you're cooking, just look at them. Just divert your attention on them. All right. Those senses that bring in those nature, the natural elements, that will automatically bring your emotions down. Okay, you could stabilize your emotions. The second tip that I would like to give here is, this is an opportunity for you to achieve your goals. What do I mean by that? Okay, it's just not about cooking. While you're cooking, think about what you want to achieve. All right, let's say if you think that, okay, while I'm cooking, let this practice of cooking, all right, let this help somebody else in the world. Okay, or somebody who I know is sick, so let that person be well. Or I'm going to cook the food, I'm going to eat this food, and this food is going to help me in achieving my project today. Okay, or it's going to help achieve some goals today. So if you think of those things, this is an opportunity. Okay, constantly keep on thinking. What's happening is your emotions will come down to balance. Don't think about anything else. If you have anger, if you are rage, if you have let's say judgmental, if you have some kind of problem with your bosses, don't bring that to the kitchen when you're cooking your food, because that's going to be, all you're going to do is you are not paying attention to your food. You're not paying attention to how you're cooking. In addition to that, while you're cooking the food, you're bringing in all negative emotions into that food. All right, so make sure that your emotions are balanced. Now, meditation, when you talk about meditation, and I keep giving constantly, people who attend my meditation talks would notice that whenever I talk about meditation, I always say 3 components you have to bring in for your meditation: attention, focus, and awareness. Okay, the question is, can you bring those 3 components when you're cooking your food? So when you're cooking your food, your attention needs to be on the food, focus on the food, awareness, yes, I am preparing this food that's going to help me and that's going to help whoever it is, the family members or the people around me, whoever it is. So that awareness has to be there, that awareness about optimal health and wellness from this food that I'm cooking. All right, when you think about that, imagine now cooking becomes an act of meditation. You don't have to separately go into a corner. You don't have to go shave your hair. You don't have to burn an incense stick. You don't have to wear orange robes. While you're cooking, this becomes an act of meditation. All right, so that we have taken care of the emotions. Now, what about the mind? Where is the mind? All right, while you're cooking, is your mind somewhere else? Thinking about maybe the politics, thinking about your boss, thinking about your work, thinking about your family, thinking about your spouse, about your children, about the challenges that you're facing. All these, what are they causing for your mind? Your mind is all over the place. Your mind is in a turmoil, a lot of dramas. You don't want that. You want your mind to be on the cooking itself. Okay, so how do I bring my mind to the cooking aspect? One way to bring that is, we thank people for a kind gesture, right? So let's thank the food that we are about to use for cooking purposes. Let's thank all the people or all the nature elements that resulted in that food that is coming to us, which we are going to be using. All right, so send a mental thank you note to all those people who are involved in the food chain. Not just that, along with that, send also a mental thank you note saying that, yes, I have this food that's going to help me and my family and the people around me. For those people who do not have, hopefully today or tomorrow you will have food for yourself. You're sending a positive word for those people who have not been able to get a meal for that day or for that moment. Okay, so the minute you engage your mind in those aspects, notice that all those emotions come down, your mind is balanced. All right, and then you can pay attention to what you're cooking. Now, another thing is convert this cooking aspect into mental exercise. And in the next few sessions later on, I'll talk about the importance of mental exercise. Mental exercise is needed, especially to bring about branching of the neurons. All right, helps you to make your brain more resilient. One way to make cooking a mental exercise is to recall all the steps that you used for cooking. What did I cook yesterday? What steps did I use to cook that food? What spices did I use? What colors were there? Can you recall those moments 24 hours or 48 hours after you finished cooking? That becomes a very powerful mental exercise. And to recall those events, naturally your mind has to be on the cooking aspect. All right, so we talked about the emotions, we talked about the mind and the cooking aspect. Now the question is body. So when you're cooking the food, okay, how do you engage your body? Number one, think about cooking as a physical exercise. Okay, so use all your five senses to appreciate the food that you're cooking. Okay, so take in the smells, take in the aromas, make sure that you hear the crackling of the sounds whenever you are cooking the food. Okay, feel the smells. Why do you think COVID is not the only condition, but there are other conditions as well where we talk about loss of the sense of smell and taste? How do you keep your sense of smell and taste going on? How do you keep them resilient? How do you strengthen them? Well, the only way that can strengthen your sense of smell and the sense of taste is to pay attention to the activity you're doing. And right now I'm cooking the food. Let me make sure that my senses are active. Okay. And remember one thing, please remember that when you're cooking the food, think about cooking not just for your own self, but there are others who are going to benefit from that food. It could be your spouse, it could be your family members, it could be your children, or maybe you're cooking for somebody else. So all those people are going to benefit from your cooking. Okay, so if you are maintaining positive emotions, if your mind is on the food, then that food becomes a very powerful, I would say, mana or an ingredient for those people who are going to feed off from that food, okay, for their goals to be achieved. So listen, notice how you are helping the society in that way. Okay, so the benefits are enormous once you bring your body, mind, and emotions on the cooking aspect. All right. So now, let's say you have finished cooking, and now you're ready to eat your food. Okay. In my book, I mentioned you are what you eat, how you eat, where you eat, when you eat, and why you eat. 5 components. Okay, think about it. It becomes very, very important. I mean, eating is not just an activity. Remember, eating, you're doing eating because what's happening is with that eating, you are strengthening your body, you're strengthening your mind, you're strengthening your emotions. And that is what keeps you going. That is what helps you to achieve your goals. That is what helps you to fulfill your aspirations. That is what helps your family to thrive. That's what helps the society to move forward. So eating is not just an activity. Behind that entire act, there's a progress. You're moving forward. All right. So you have to make sure that you bring in your emotions, mind, and body when you're eating your food. Okay. So when you're eating, once again, where are your emotions? So before you sit to eat, okay, before you start putting the food into your mouth, think about your emotions. Look back and say, how am I feeling? Am I rageful? Am I having a lot of anger? Am I having a lot of judgment? Am I having a lot of rage? Okay. Am I having a lot of criticality? Because remember one thing, behind these emotions is nothing but interplay of hormones and neurochemicals. And if you have, and most of it is all adrenal, what we call the flight or fight response. Okay, response to stress. Okay, so adrenaline. And the minute you have high levels of adrenaline, which is causing all these emotions to come up in your mind or in your brain, that adrenaline can play havoc with your digestion. And I'm not pulling this out of my hat. Go research it out. There are a lot of research studies that show what happens when you have excess adrenaline in your system. It plays havoc with your digestion. So even if you take the best of the foods, all right, even if you're cooked with all due attention and awareness and focus, but if your mind or if you have a lot of problems in your emotions, and while you're eating, that food is not going to help you. Okay. Now, when you sit to eat, make sure once again saying that I am taking this food. Let this food help me to achieve my goals. Let this food help me to fulfill my aspirations. Let this food help others as well to achieve their goals. So the minute you talk about yourself and others, your emotions come down. Why? Because you're helping others. The minute you talk about the altruistic gesture is what brings your emotions down and keeps them at balance. All right. So always cultivate that good habit about keeping your emotions at bay when you're eating your food. Eat in a calm environment. Go to a corner, go to a place where you're totally undisturbed, because after all, you're going to spend like 15-20 minutes. Why can't we do this activity without being disturbed? Okay. And be mindful of when you're eating. Don't bring in other activities, because you have to have your emotions while you're eating your food. You have to have your emotions in place. Your mind should be on the food itself. Now, it's just not cooking. Even eating is a meditation. Eating requires for you to be having your focus, your awareness, and your attention on the food. Okay, and attention, focus, and awareness is nothing but meditation. So now it's just not cooking. Even eating now becomes meditation. So when somebody tells you, are you meditating? Don't think about sitting in a corner and closing your eyes and keeping your hands in a lotus or a what we call the Gnana Mudra and saying, yes, I'm meditating. No, you can say that, yes, I'm meditating when I'm cooking. I'm meditating when I'm eating. It's a very powerful procedure. All right. So now you sat down to eat, your emotions, you noticed, are not are balanced. Okay. Now think about your mind as well. Okay. Now your mind should be calm. The first thing you can do to calm your mind is send a thank you note. There were so many people who are responsible for bringing this food to me. All right. I didn't cook the food. Somebody else did. So thank you to that person. Thank you to all the farmers. Thank you to all the traders who brought the food. Thanks to the nature's elements. I mean, the minute you have wildfires in California, or the minute you have storms or hurricanes or typhoons everywhere else, what happens first? The first thing that gets impacted is the agriculture, the crops, the food. All right. So now when we have a bountiful of food in front of us, it becomes necessary for us to thank nature's elements. All right. Everybody in the food chain. So why do you think this is important? It's important because the minute you say, so when somebody does a good gesture and you say thank you, why you're doing that? Because your mind is happy. You want others to be happy. In the same way, when you sit in front of your food and you say thank you to all those who are responsible for this food, what's happening? Your mind is at calm. And you're thanking somebody else. You're sending positive feelings for the others who are responsible for that. So now your attention is on the eating, your focus is on the eating, your mind is on the eating. All right. Recall, think about all the taste, the colors, the shapes and the size of the food. All right. And then try to recall 24 hours or 48 hours later, try to recall what were the steps. If you would cook the food, what were the steps I used to cook the food, and try to recall what you cooked. For those people who did not cook the food but who just ate the food, try to recall what you ate 24 hours prior or 48 hours prior. It's a very good mental exercise, my friend, because it helps to strengthen your neurons. It helps to what we call neuroplasticity. It provokes neuroplasticity. And that's what keeps your mind resilient. That's what strengthens your mind. All right, so your emotions are in place now. Your mind is in place. Now, appreciate the food through your 5 senses. Take the smell. Watch the food. Your sense of sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. Touch. There is a reason why we always say eat your food with your fingers or with your hands. And now, by the way, functional medicine doctors will tell you that try not to use a spoon or a fork. Try to use your fingers, because functional medicine doctors will tell you that there are pressure points. They have shown that by evidence-based studies. There are pressure points on the skin. Okay, so even though we say digestion first starts at the mouth, it's not. Digestion first starts in the fingertips. What do we mean by that? What happens is the minute you touch your food with the fingers, okay, it sends impulses to the brain saying that okay, we are ready to eat. The brain then sends the signals to the stomach saying that start liberating those acids. Okay, so the pressure points on the fingers are the stimulants for the digestive action to take place. So that's the reason why we always say that, traditionally in a Vedic text, in our culture, they said hold the food with your fingers. One is so that you're stimulating the pressure points so that you can start the digestive process. The second reason is, the feel for it. The minute you touch the food, you are in a way, sending thanks to all those people who are responsible for bringing that food. And the third thing is, when you touch the food, okay, it helps you to gauge what is the temperature of the food. All right. So now that you've taken the food in your fingers, take the food into your mouth. All right. Start chewing it for 30 counts. 30 counts, 25 to 30 counts. You have to chew the food. Digestion now begins in the mouth. Okay. The minute you start counting, okay, the minute you start chewing the food, what happens is the saliva start getting generated. The combination of the saliva, okay, and the food becomes, as you keep counting, it becomes more and more. You start swallowing the food only when the food becomes very, very soft. That's when it happens. That's when it becomes easy to digest food. There is a reason why we have 32 teeth in the mouth and not in the gut. In the gut, there are no teeth. There are teeth only in the mouth. Okay, there is a reason for that, and the reason is it needs that mastication activity or chewing activity begins in the mouth. That's when the brain then further signals the stomach saying that, okay, the food is here. Starts stimulating the dietary juices. Number one. Number two, what happens is that masticatory action when you chew your food helps strengthen the brain as well. Okay, so chewing is very much a part of the eating process. Now, if you have to count, okay, your mind cannot be distracted, right? Because to count, your mind has to be in the count. So now what's happening is when you're counting, number one, number two, you're counting in your mind is focused. So now notice what's happening. Your emotions are in place, your mind is busy counting, and your mouth is now doing the act of chewing. All right, so everything has come to that process, to that stage where you are able to appreciate the food now. We are able to digest the food better. So the combination of the saliva and the food now reaches the gut. Okay, and guess what? This is a very powerful, natural way, not only to take less, but also powerful way to reduce fat. So for people who are out there who are worried about gaining fat, this is a natural way to lose fat. Because what happens is after 3 or 4 morsels of food, because it's now a combination of food and saliva, the stomach says, I'm full now. So even though you may have a big buffet of food in front of you, all you're eating is only a little amount. So do that. Now this doesn't come with one day. Okay, you have to do that for a few days, several days, actually maybe several months. But over time, what happens is it's an irreversible effect. You will definitely lose fat. All right. So the question is, once again, appreciate the food to the 5 senses. Take the morsel of food, start chewing it, and once you chew it, make sure that you then swallow it. Okay. So what are all the benefits from it? The benefits are your digestion becomes optimal because your mind, your emotions, and your body, everything is combined. Everything is in sync. So digestion is optimal. There are no GI issues. Look back at your eating habits and notice what's happening after you finish your eating. Are you experiencing sleep? Are you experiencing gas? Are you experiencing bloating? Are you experiencing cramping? Or if you have all these issues, or are you feeling very sleepy? If you're experiencing all these issues, it means you did not have your emotions and mind on the food. Okay, your emotions, mind, and body were all at different places when you were eating. And number two, you did not eat your food properly, not like the way I suggested. Okay, if you do the way I suggested, you should not have any GI issues. You should feel more at ease, and you should feel active. You should not feel slumpy. You should not feel sleepy. And the third point, your hunger should return after 4 to 5 hours after eating. However much you eat after lunch, okay, if you do the way I do it, then you won't have to eat a lot. But the good thing is your hunger should return after 4 to 5 hours. If you practice all this, my friends, it will regulate your weight, it will build your immunity. Immunity comes not just from physical body, it comes from the mind. And the way you build immunity at the level of mind and body is to make sure that whatever activity you do, your emotions, your mind, and your body are all acting as one unit. So cooking and eating are just not physical activity, it's also mental and emotional exercise. All right. So follow this simple guideline, do it for the next few weeks, okay, and bring your comments, bring your experience, bring your suggestions at the next session we have, which is next month, the first Sunday of the month. All right. So with this, let me stop here, and I'll take, Radhika will have questions. I'll take questions from her, and then I'll take questions from the audience. All right.
Thank you very much, Ram. And I really appreciate this. I'm sure everybody else has appreciated it. And everyone, it's when I'm listening to this, it is actually what brings to my mind is Ram is asking us to live in the moment. I mean, this is not something new that he's saying, but he's bringing this to our attention, because down the line, we seem to have forgotten what our elders and everybody used to say, and leave the extra baggage out. And what brings to my mind also is, when I used to enjoy my mother's cooking, I would say, I use the same recipe, but it doesn't come out the same way. And she would say, I'm taking a little bit from the box over the stove. And what it is was, she would say that it is a little bit of love. So she would put a lot of love into the cooking, and it showed. It really showed. It was extremely nice, and we used to enjoy it. So I really appreciate the way Ram has brought this and combined all the three aspects: the food, the exercise, and the mind together, in order to help us benefit from it. So the first question, and this is one of the questions that he has received in the past from other people. In my office setting, it is difficult to look for a place to eat where there is absolutely no disturbance. What should I do?
That's a very common question I get from a lot of people. And then, when I say all this, my friends, don't expect, I mean, it's not that I'm doing my level best to practice this. Okay, even though I wrote the book, there are times when I go off the program. Okay, but the question is, I come back again to it. Okay, so wherever possible, do it. If it's not possible, don't get so worried about. So let's say you don't find a place. Okay, it's a disturbed environment. The question is, okay, you even if it's a disturbed environment, within the disturbed environment, can you practice other aspects of what I just said? Can you just keep your mind on the food? Okay, switch off your computer. Okay, remove the headphones. Leave a note. When I sit, I'll say, do not disturb me for the next 15 minutes. Okay, so leave a note. Even though you are not in a specific corner, you're still in your office door, leave a note saying that do not disturb for 15 minutes. And then just remove all the computer aids. Do not worry about taking any questions. Do not worry about writing any notes. Just focus on the food. So even though it's not a separate environment, or it's a sort of a disturbed environment, at least you're making your effort to be mindful of what the food is right now in front of me. So my mind is on the food, my emotions on the food, my body is on the food. It doesn't matter what's going on around me. I couldn't find a better place, but whatever place I have right now, let me focus on that, and let me focus on the food. Okay, so that's something that you can inculcate. The other thing is, and I have mentioned that in my book as well, please, if possible, okay, try not to do those brown bag meetings, brown bag lunches. It's not the ideal situation. Okay, you're first opening your brown bag, you're opening your sandwiches, you're biting on the apple, you're biting on the sandwich, you're not paying attention to the speaker. The speaker is going on talking something, you're not paying attention there, you're not paying attention to your food, you're chewing on your food. Please don't do that. The best thing is, if you have a brown bag seminar, lunch seminars, or a brown bag meeting, something, go there, attend to the meeting, don't eat your food. Come back, either eat before that or eat after that. All right. So try to see how you can bring in, if not 100%, at least 90% of what I said, if you can bring it to your food. And if you can do that every day, that's fine. Okay, lunch may be a disturbance because you couldn't find a suitable spot. Dinner, there's no excuse. You're at home, can you still find a spot where you can be undisturbed? So there are things where you can make those great calls, I would say.
And I'm sure we have come across this next question. What should I do if my mind brings in the picture of my boss in the middle of my eating process?
Well, I mean, that's that's another question that I keep getting, saying that, I just came out of the meeting and I'm all perturbed and my boss was not very happy with me and it's lunchtime. You told me to eat lunch at 12. It's already 12, but my mind is all over the place. I just came back from the meeting. What should I do? Well, the question is, yes, there was some maybe tumultuous exchange in the meeting room and everybody was perturbed and you came out of the meeting and you are all flustered and everything. The question is, can you get out to nature before you start eating? If you cannot, okay, go to a place where you be undisturbed. Okay, this may sound very vague, but if you don't find a place to calm your mind down, what I do is sometimes I don't find a place to calm down. Where I go to the bathroom because I can lock myself in. All right, nobody is there to disturb me. I just stand there for a few seconds, calm my mind down. All right, and then come back to food. The best thing you can do is think about this few times, saying that I'm not going to think about my boss while I'm eating. I'm not going to think about my boss while I'm eating. Say that out 3 times in your mind. All right, and then, or if it's still bothering you, just keep a picture of some flower or some nature or something that is much more pleasing. All right, and then focus on the food and focus on the picture. That will help to bring down the mind away from the boss and to be on the present moment.
Is it a good practice to eat with fingers instead of a spoon and fork? I know you have already touched on this, but is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, and by the way, whatever I mentioned in the last 15-20 minutes, it is not just about yoga, ayurveda. Okay, yoga and ayurveda textbooks talked about all this, but now we have evidence-based studies, and if whoever is skeptical about all this, if you want to have studies to show, to see whether this is true or not, just write to me and I can send you scientific-based studies. My book has all the references. So with regard to the pressure points on the fingers that help you to achieve oneness with the food, yes, there is a reason why they say eat the food with your fingers. Okay, and as I said, functional medicine is recognizing the importance of using the food or touching the food with your fingers. It's a very good practice. It helps, as I said, digestion begins here. So the pressure points, so that is number 1. Number 2, it helps to send the signals to the brain, number 2. And number 3, it helps you to feel the temperature of the food as well. So very, very, very essential that you touch the food with your fingers.
And I want to open it up to the participants. If you have any other questions, you can either do a chat and send us the questions and Ram will be able to answer it. Or we can unmute everybody and you can...
Shall I unmute everybody? I think that's better, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me unmute everybody and then, you can go ahead and ask your questions.
Hello.
Yes.
Oh, hi, Ram. This is Sanjay.
Hi, Sanjay.
Hi. Just wanted to ask how much seeing the food and the smell of the food contributes to the same appetite?
Yeah, that's a very good question. How does smell and say watching the food helps? So remember one thing: even though our brains maybe, our mind is very subtle. All right, you may not be able to see, but there's a lot of things happening at the level of the mind when you see something with your eyes or when you feel something with your fingers. Okay, aromatherapy is a big thing in the health field right now. Go and check it on Google, and you'll notice that aromatherapy has become, it's one of the most beneficial, I would say, subtle therapies, which stimulates the brain, which stimulates the mind as well. So the minute you take in through your nostrils, and the other thing is, there's a part of the nose, okay, just about the sinuses, what we call the olfactory lobules. The olfactory lobules, they have a direct connection with the hippocampal areas of the brain. Okay, so the minute you take in some smells, it stimulates the olfactory nerves, and the olfactory nerves then stimulate the memory centers of the brain, the hippocampal areas and the other areas of the brain, the limbic system. All right, and that then results in secreting neurohormones and neurochemicals. So one way to stimulate the neurochemicals and neurohormones involved in digestion is to make sure that you breathe in or you take the smells of the food. The same thing happens with the sight as well. The visual impulses from the eyes straight away impinge on the brain and then stimulate these. So when we talk about the hormones or chemicals involved in digestion, it's just not, it needs an impulse, it needs a stimulant, and the stimulation comes from these 5 senses. All right, and in my book I mentioned about the brain, 5 senses, the nexus between the 5 senses in the brain, and this is again recognized by a lot of research studies.
Thank you, Ram.
Sure.
Any other questions, anybody? Okay, I have one question, Ram.
Yes.
What if my food gets softened before 20 chews? Should I still continue to chew for 25 to 30 counts?
So you know what, I mean, that's a great question. So a lot of people, when I say something like this, I hope people, use about their sense, in the sense that you don't need to chew the food if you're taking soup, okay, because the soup is liquidy. However, if you have vegetables in the soup, then yes, those vegetables have to be chewed. Okay, so if it's already a softened food, then you don't want to soften it further. All right, but having said that, okay, please make sure that you don't stop your food with just a soup. Okay, because, and this is so amazing, because what happens is, one of the ways to strengthen the brain, and one of the ways to keep the brain resilient, okay, and strong, and the nerves, okay, is make sure.
Yeah, how is it? I'm
going to mute people here.
Yeah.
So one of the ways to strengthen the brain and strengthen the nerves is to make sure that you actually use your teeth. Okay, the mastication activity is necessary for the brain to function. I mean, you may not realize that, but this is a beautiful study that, I mean, several studies have shown that you have to chew, you have to have the masticatory action in order to strengthen the brain and strengthen the mind. That's one of the reasons why they say, one of the things that I do research is Alzheimer's disease, and one of the things that we've seen in our patients is people who have dentures, or people who do not have, who have lost all their teeth, they tend to lose the memory faster. The reason being that because they don't have teeth, they tend to use softened food, and the softened food then causes, it doesn't stimulate the brain action or the brain activity. So yes, soupy food is good, but make sure that you have hard food that you can chew. And once it is softened, you don't have to count for it. The minimum is 25, okay? But if you have already softened the food, then you don't need to be there on 25 or 30 counts. I'm just giving a ballpark, somewhere between 20 to 30 counts.
Okay. And one more question. And you also mentioned that, find a nice calm place and eat by yourself and this thing. But when you have your family, at that time, it is, isn't it better to have it along with the family and enjoy the food and talk to them and everything? How do you practice it at that time? Is it
Yeah.
What would you suggest?
No, I mean, there's one more thing. Isolation itself is also not good. All right, you need a social setup where people gather together and you eat in a community, and that's one of the reasons why typically back in our Indian environments, in temples and all those places, you see a lot of people gathered together and you eat. So yes, it is necessary, especially when you have people and all that. The question is though, what can you practice then? When, let's say you're in a social gathering, okay, you want to be there, you don't want to be self-isolated, because then it doesn't look good. Plus, it's always good to be in a social environment. The question is, there are other things you can practice when you are in a social environment. Limit the number of talks that you have, limit the number of chats you have, because you want to pay attention to the food, right? So try not to talk, be in that environment, but limit your conversation, limit your talk, and make sure that even if you talk, make sure that it is something that is pleasing. Don't bring in politics, don't bring in sports, don't bring in things that will agitate your mind or agitate your emotions, okay? Because anything that causes disruption of the mind, body, and the emotion nexus while you're eating is not good. So do your best, be in that environment, but at the same time, try to see if you can practice all these things.
Any other questions?
I have one question. Namaste.
Yes.
My name is Sirisha. Um, I do come across kids and a lot of different parents talking about the kids having an issue with the texture of the food. If, if it's too gooey or if it's too, um, if like every kid is different, right? I mean, so how do we, I mean, even though we try to cook it in different forms, some kids are like, you can make them eat. So do you have any suggestions or anything else? I mean, no matter what you do, like you divert them,
Yes.
you explain it, you know, in both scientific ways, like, okay, this food has so many vitamins or minerals and this is good for you, and the benefits of eating that. Sometimes it's hard to convince them, especially as young as like 4 or 5 year olds. So do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I when I wrote this book, they were my cousins and other people. They asked me the same thing.
Okay.
How do we inculcate this into our kids? Because after all, even if we didn't get to do this, at least let our kids benefit from all these practices. So you do your best. Reward mechanism is a good way to go. One way to tell them is if you do this, make sure that you are paying attention and all that. We will reward you something. Or the other thing is, if one thing that my cousin told her daughter, who is in the fifth grade or something. She said, if you want to be the next top person in the class, or if you want a teacher to appreciate what you're doing, make sure that you eat this food for the next few days. If you eat it, then you will be able to achieve that. So things like that. Actually, so there's less of peer pressure, but there's more of peer involvement. You can say that you'll be better than your peers, or your teacher will appreciate you. Or if you bring in your own self, they may not appreciate, but if you bring in your teachers, or if you bring in the friends, then they'll appreciate better. So that's what she said. She said, either Ram uncle said this or the teacher said this. I'm not saying it, but the teacher said this or Ram uncle said this. That really helped, I believe. So she was with the intention that, okay, Ram uncle said that if I eat this, then I'll become an astronaut. And so she started eating those things that she didn't like. Started eating that. The other thing is, if they have any health issues, you can say that this will help you in moving forward with that you won't have any pain. So another cousin actually said, Ram uncle mentioned that if you eat this, then it will help overcome your pain. So they said, okay, it's not coming from the parents, it's coming from somebody else. Okay, let me do that. And 3 days later, it helped. And she said, oh yeah, Ram uncle said it's correct. Okay. She actually sent me an email. She said, Ram uncle, thank you very much. It's helping me. I overcome my pain. So, if you say it's coming from me, they may not like it. But if it's coming from others, or if it's coming from, the teachers or somebody, maybe that will help. So try some of those tricks. I know it's a little tough, but, use some kind of an ingenious ways to overcome those problems.
No, I think that was helpful. I mean, definitely, I think instead of making it all about just their
The
health and
parents.
just themselves or about the parents,
Yes.
I think making it maybe inclusively somehow,
Yeah.
bring
And
in other important people.
seriously, I'll
Yes.
tell you another thing. This also helped me. What I do is tell your kid, and this helped. Tell your kid. Let's say your kid's name is Arjun. Arjun, this food is very good, and um, let's say I'm trying to catch a name. Mike. Mike wants to eat this. Mike wants to improve on this, and this food will help him. Will you please tell him that this food will help him? He'll say, oh, is it? Okay. So Arjun goes to Mike and says, Mike, eat this food, it will help you. Okay. And if it helps, then it becomes like a rewarding mechanism. He says, okay, so it helped Mike, so it will help me too. So put in their shoes somebody else who needs that help. And then, that will make them a little more sort of what they call empowering. So these are all empowering techniques that we use.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I remember my uncle telling me when I was little, he would say, if I ate my bhindi, my okra, then I would score 100% in math. And if I ate my carrot salad, then my eyes would improve and I would not have to wear glasses. So, I remember listening to him about it, and consequently, I would definitely eat that. And it wasn't coming from my parents, but it was my uncle whom I loved very much. So I felt that he must know something.
Yeah, it helped. Right, right, absolutely.
Yeah. So, are there any more questions? Okay.
So my suggestion is, let's follow this for the next 1 month.
Yes.
Do your best. I mean, if you stray away from it, no problems. This is not a dead end. I mean, you can always come back to it, but try to see if you can inculcate this. The more number of times you can inculcate it, the better. And come with your experience, because next month I'll have some more tips for the mind, emotions, and body. We'll talk about some other tips, not just eating, but other things as well.
Right.
That will help us.
So next session will be on November 1st, and that's the first Sunday of the month. And to stay up to date, we will ask you to, to join the WhatsApp group. The emails and Facebook notifications, everything will be coming. But if you would like to do that, please go to our website and join the WhatsApp group, or join the WhatsApp group through the link that you joined this Zoom session in. If you have any other questions, please feel free to send it to contact us at northbaytemple.org, and we'll collect all the questions and request Ram to provide the information and the responses. And this session is being recorded, so it will be available on our website, northbaytemple.org. And on everybody's behalf, Ram, I wanted to thank you very much for taking the time and opportunity to give us these wonderful tips. We look forward to gaining from your wisdom. And so we will see everyone next time. Please help spread the word. Because we want everybody to benefit from this knowledge and to have a good life. Thank you, and see you all next time.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Ram.
Thank you.
Thank you.